The countdown has officially started, and if you are living in California, Arizona, or Nevada, you are standing on ground zero of the single largest energy collapse in modern American history. We aren't talking about a price hike. We aren't talking about inflation. We are talking about a systemic, deliberate implosion of the fuel supply chain that keeps the fifth largest economy in the world running. Phillips 66, gone. Valero, signaling the end. Two of the absolute giants of West Coast refining are pulling the plug, and they are doing it now. Governor Gavin Newsom is standing at the podium talking about corporate greed, but behind closed doors, his administration is watching the energy grid disintegrate in real time. By the end of this video, you will understand why $8 a gallon might actually be the good news, and why the worst-case scenario involves empty pumps and food rotting in trucks that can't move. But before we expose the data that Sacramento is terrified you'll see, I need to address something critical. There are now dozens of channels attempting to copy my face, my voice, and my analysis. They are re-uploading my content or using AI to mimic this channel to sell you scams. Listen to me closely. This is the only official channel. I will never ask you for crypto, and I will never message you on WhatsApp. If you want the truth, the uncut, unsanitized economic reality that the mainstream media refuses to air, you need to make sure you are subscribed right here. Check the handle. Verify the source. Now, let's get into the nightmare that is unfolding in the Golden State. To understand this crisis, you have to look away from the stock charts for a second and look at the asphalt. I want to tell you about Mike. I spoke with Mike earlier this week. He's an owner-operator running a small logistics fleet out of the Central Valley. For 20 years, Mike has moved produce from the farms in Fresno to the distribution hubs in Los Angeles. He's the guy who puts lettuce on your table. 2 months ago, Mike was running 5 trucks. Today, he's running 2. Why? Because diesel prices in California aren't just high, they are predatory. Mike told me, "I'm not closing because I don't have work. I have plenty of work. I'm closing because every time I turn the key in the ignition, I lose money." Think about that. He has customers. He has demand. But the cost of fuel, driven by the specific refinery policies we are about to discuss, has made his business mathematically impossible. He's laying off drivers, men with families, mortgages, and kids in college. One of his drivers, a guy we'll call Luis, has worked for him for a decade. Mike had to look Luis in the eye last Friday and tell him there simply wasn't a truck for him anymore. Translation: this isn't just about paying more at the pump. This is about the destruction of the working class economy. When the refineries close, the diesel stops. When the diesel stops, the trucks stop. And when the trucks stop, Mike loses his livelihood, and you lose your grocery supply. This is the human face of a bureaucratic disaster. So why is this happening? Why would Phillips 66 shut down a massive facility in Los Angeles that supplies 8% of the state's gasoline? Why is Valero signaling a retreat from Benicia? The media will tell you it's market dynamics. That is a lie. This is a crime scene, and the weapon used was legislation. We need to talk about SBX 1.2 and ABX 2.1 WAGs. These are the innocent-sounding names for the laws that are strangling the life out of the energy sector. Let's look at SBX 1.2, signed by Governor Newsom. This law authorized the California Energy Commission to penalize refiners for making too much money. They call it a price gouging penalty. Translation: the state government decided they know how to price gasoline better than the global market, and they threatened to seize profits if companies didn't comply. Imagine you run a lemonade stand. The city comes along and says, if you sell that lemonade for a profit that we think is too high, we are going to fine you into oblivion. What do? You don't sell cheaper lemonade. You close the stand. That is exactly what Phillips 66 is doing. They looked at the regulatory environment, the hostile taxes, the mandates, the threat of seizure, and they said, we are out. And it's not just the profit caps. It's the inventory mandates. The state recently passed laws requiring refineries to stockpile fuel to prevent price spikes. Translation: the government is forcing private companies to build massive, expensive storage facilities to hold product they aren't allowed to sell, costing them millions in overhead, just so politicians can look like they are doing something. Let's look at the numbers. The Phillips 66 LA refinery produces 139,000 barrels per day. That is roughly 85,000 barrels of gasoline and 65,000 barrels of diesel and jet fuel every single day. When that facility goes offline in late 2025, that supply evaporates. But surely, the politicians say, we can just import it. Here is the data point they are hiding from you. California is an energy island. There are no pipelines connecting California to the Gulf Coast or the Midwest. You cannot just pipe in gas from Texas. It has to come by ship. It takes weeks to get a tanker from Asia or through the Panama Canal. Furthermore, look at the cleanup costs. Reports indicate there is a lake of oil under these old refineries, contamination from a century of drilling. The cost to clean this up is in the hundreds of millions. By forcing these companies out early with hostile laws like ABX 21, the state is triggering a chaotic exit where environmental liabilities are going to be tied up in court for decades, while the land sits useless and the workers sit unemployed. This isn't an accident. This is the result of the California Air Resources Board, CARB, and the Newsom administration betting everything on a transition to electric vehicles that simply isn't happening fast enough to replace the infrastructure they are destroying. They are burning down the bridge while we are still standing on it. They are dismantling the fossil fuel system before the renewable system is ready to carry the load. And the result? A supply cliff. We are losing nearly 140,000 barrels of capacity in a market that is already tight. When supply drops and demand stays flat, prices don't just rise, they explode. We are looking at a math problem that ends in economic ruin. Now, if you are sitting in Las Vegas or Phoenix thinking, well, California is crazy, but I'm safe here in my red state, you are dead wrong. You need to wake up immediately. California is not just an energy island, it is the energy supplier for the entire American West. Arizona and Nevada do not have their own massive refining capacity. They rely on pipelines that originate, you guessed it, in California. Let's look at the Kinder Morgan pipeline system. It pumps fuel from Southern California refineries directly into Las Vegas and Phoenix. When the Phillips 66 refinery in LA shuts down, what do you think flows through that pipe? Nothing. Air. The Nevada Trucking Association has already sounded the alarm. They are warning that if California supply tightens, Nevada gas prices could hit water $8 a gallon. Ain't shuck. Translation: the incompetence in Sacramento is about to become a tax on every family in Reno, Las Vegas, and Phoenix. This is a contagion. We are already seeing the warning signs. Governor Lombardo in Nevada has formed a fuel resiliency committee. Why do you think a governor forms a fuel resiliency committee? Because they know a crash is coming. They know that when California sneezes, Nevada gets pneumonia. Think about the supply chain. If diesel hits $8 or $9 a gallon in the West, the cost of everything goes up. Your Amazon package, more expensive. The avocados from Mexico, more expensive. The construction materials for the housing boom in Phoenix, skyrocketing. This creates a death spiral for local economies. Small businesses in Arizona operate on thin margins. They cannot absorb a 40% increase in transportation costs. They will pass that cost to you, the consumer. And if you can't pay it, they close. We are looking at a regional economic seizure. We have already seen what happens when gas prices spike. Disposable income vanishes. People stop eating out. They stop buying clothes. They stop taking vacations. The entire service economy of Las Vegas depends on tourists driving in or flying in. Jet fuel is also refined at these California plants. If jet fuel supply collapses, ticket prices soar and the casinos go empty. This is the ripple effect of a stupid law. A bureaucrat in Sacramento signs a piece of paper to penalize greedy oil companies, and 6 months later, a waitress in Las Vegas loses her job because tourism collapsed due to high fuel costs. It is all connected. The West Coast energy grid is a single organism, and California is the heart. And right now, the heart is failing. So where does this go? I have analyzed the data, the regulatory filings, and the shipping manifests. I've mapped out 3 scenarios for late 2025 and early 2026. Keep in mind, these are not predictions. These are possibilities grounded in data. In this scenario, the refineries close as scheduled. California manages to secure some imports from South Korea and China, but it takes weeks for ships to arrive. Gas prices in California stabilize around $6.50 to $7 a gallon. Nevada and Arizona sit at $5.50. Inflation in the West remains stubbornly high, 2 to 3% higher than the rest of the U.S. The working class gets crushed. Credit card debt explodes as people borrow to pay for gas, but the system doesn't fully break. It's a slow, grinding poverty. This is highly unlikely, but possible. The federal government steps in. They realize that a collapse of the Western energy grid is a national security threat. They use emergency powers to override California's state laws, forcing the refineries to stay open or subsidizing their operation. Newsom loses face, but the pumps stay full. Prices hover around $5. It's embarrassing for the Democrats, but it saves the economy. Do not hold your breath for this. This is the scenario that keeps me up at night. The refineries close and simultaneously a geopolitical event, a war in the Middle East or a blockade in the South China Sea disrupts the tanker ships that California is relying on to replace the lost production. Translation: the local supply is gone, and the foreign backup never arrives. In this scenario, we see physical rationing. You will see license plate days. Odd numbers buy gas on Monday, even numbers on Tuesday. You will see stations running dry for days. Essential services like garbage trucks and ambulances will have to be prioritized. The economy of the American West grinds to a halt. We see a mass exodus of population that makes the current migration look like a trickle. $10 gas becomes the norm, and the black market for fuel explodes. The writing is on the wall. The signs are there in the regulatory filings, in the trucking logs of guys like Mike, and in the panic of neighboring governors. They are dismantling the energy infrastructure that keeps you alive, and they are replacing it with promises and paperwork. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about survival. It's about whether you can afford to drive to work next year. It's about whether the grocery store shelves stay stocked. I want to ask you a direct question. What are you seeing in your town right now? Are the diesel pumps already ticking up? Are local trucking companies in your area selling off their fleets? Leave a comment below. I read the comments to get the real on-the-ground data that the news won't report. If you want to stay ahead of this collapse, if you want the truth while everyone else is selling you lies, you need to click that subscribe button right now. Share this video with anyone who lives in the West. Warn them.